Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, December the 7th, 2023. So today is the 82nd anniversary of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to look at the astrology of this attack and why it is important. The reason Pearl Harbor is important from an astrological point of view is because we need to have an understanding of when the United States came into being. So the United States was born on July the 4th, 1776, and there is some argument about what time America came into being. Generally accepted view is this is a signing of the Declaration of Independence, but when on July the 4th, 1776, did this actually happen? Now, most astrologers work on the time of 10 past 5 in the afternoon. This is called the Sibley chart, after an astrologer, Sibley, who used, I think he was a 19th century astrologer, Sibley. He used this chart. But we do have this concern. How do we know 10 past 5 in the afternoon? Are we going to take Sibley's word for it? So what we can do is we can look at events taking place afterwards and ask, well, does it fit with the United States chart? And so we really need to consider big events. What are the most important events in America's history? And clearly Pearl Harbor is one of the most important events in America's history. A bad event, sure, but you could say, well, it launched America. America in many ways benefited enormously from the Second World War. Then there was 9/11, more recent. Difficult to see how 9/11 benefited the United States, but that was a devastating event for the country. And so you look at events like Pearl Harbor or 9/11, and one compares them with the 1776 chart for 5:10 p.m. and one asks, does this fit? And I think it does fit, and I will sort of demonstrate by looking at America's chart, comparing it with Pearl Harbor, and to a lesser extent with 9/11, to confirm that the United States was born around 5:10 p.m. I also want to consider when the next attack might be, because I think there is some evidence to suggest that America's next point of enormous vulnerability is in 2028, and I'll be considering that very briefly. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Thursday, December the 7th, 2023. So here we have the chart for today. Sorry about the picture, but it is Pearl Harbor Day. I think that is the USS Arizona, in smoke billowing from it as it starts to sink, or whatever else it's doing. What is going on? I'm not saying that today is going to be massively significant. The moon is still in Libra, you can see, moon middle of Libra. So like yesterday, there's going to be an emphasis on balance. The way we communicate, we want to communicate nicely. It's not a day for rocking the boat, at least in a destructive sense. Now, the moon in Libra, you will see, is making a sextile aspect to Mars, and it's a sextile aspect to the Sun. And actually, this is quite useful. So we've got this Sun-Mars conjunction. It is breaking up. it was exact some time ago. So you've got the Sun and Mars together in Sagittarius. That's quite a dynamic pair. And then the Moon is making this sextile aspect. So in terms of our social lives, perhaps, for example, we can get things moving. We can energize people, but in quite a gentle way. It's not a day for taking dramatic initiatives. It may be a good day for, I don't know, going to a party. Don't expect much, but just gentle socializing. Don't have to be too emotional about things. Yeah, in most cases, emotion should probably be avoided. Yet it is worth noting that today Venus and Mars are 36 degrees apart. You can see Venus is at 3 degrees Scorpio, Mars is at 9 degrees Sagittarius, so 36 degrees apart. So you're thinking, well, so what if they're 36 degrees apart? Well, there are 360 degrees in the circle. So 36 degrees is a tenth of the circle. So why do we care about that? Well, 10 is 5 times 2. And a 5 in astrology, if two planets were 72 degrees apart, that would be a fifth of the circle, which would be a quintile aspect. And quintiles are about style. It's what we're trying to create. So if Venus and Mars were to be in quintile, that would be the creation of an attractive style, because Venus and Mars are about charisma. There's often quite a lot of sexuality to Venus-Mars as a pair. So it may be trying to create that style if it was a quintile, trying to put perhaps more emphasis on sexuality than usual. I don't know, in terms of how one sort of dresses, the things one says, that kind of thing. But this is not a quintile. It is half a quintile. So it's not 5, it's 10. And 10 is 5 times 2. So you've got 5 as the style bit, but 2 as a number is about struggle. It's about trying to bring two things together. So if you've got Venus decile Mars, it is about the struggle to create an attractive style. In some cases, the struggle to express one's sexuality through one's speech, dress, and so forth. But it's a struggle. It's not always easy, and maybe some people are going to try too hard. So look out. Look at the people around you. Look at the people walking down the street. Look at the people on TV, on YouTube. See who are putting out stuff today. See what kind of style they are trying to express. At the same time, Mercury, there's Mercury, is making a semi-square to the Venus-Mars midpoint. So that's kind of more of the same. Mercury is a communication planet. Venus and Mars, about sexuality, it's about charisma. Some people are going to be smooth operators. It's about communicating very effectively, using whatever one can, whatever methods one can to seduce one's audience. Seductive speech. So watch out for people with silver tongues. Can you trust them? But maybe you yourself want to be seductive, maybe through your charisma and the way you express yourself in words, in writing. You can draw people in. Okay, so that's the broad astrological situation for today. And now I want to look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for today, which is Thursday, December the 7th, 2023. Aries. You can find balance, even harmony, and it's the world around you that completes the picture. So by bringing new people and new experiences into your life, you are creating something very special. And in the process, you mustn't be afraid of changing your mind about an important topic. Taurus, you think you're ready to get things done, and you're not afraid of hard work. But when you actually engage with the problem, it seems that there's nothing to do. But it is a situation where the real action is hidden, and if you want to have an impact, you'll have to dig deep. So keep trying and don't be put off by surface appearances. Gemini, Mercury, your ruler, is making a fortunate aspect to Jupiter. In a general sense, you're going to be lucky, especially if you're playing things by the rules. And by slowing down just a fraction, you'll be less likely to miss important details. Elsewhere, relationships match your expectations, with shared amusement and fun being on offer. Cancer, right now you're very grounded and you know how to make the right impression. It's because you understand your limits and you're prepared to respect other people's boundaries. Yet there's nothing standoffish about you. With Mercury aspecting Jupiter, you can communicate in a way that is open and honest. Leo, you're in sync with your surroundings and it's easy to advance your agenda. And it's because the things you do seem very natural, and because everyone feels, okay, that's fine, I don't have to question that, so no difficult questions to deal with, that you, because of all this, you can really make an important impact. And under these circumstances, there's no need to try too hard. Be yourself and project a clear image of who you are and what you want to achieve. Virgo, there's a lot of good energy around. That might sound vague, but the universe wants you to succeed, and it's signalling this through a trine aspect between Mercury, your ruler, and Jupiter, an aspect which has a direct impact on your star sign. You know what to do, and everyone wants you to succeed. If it can go right, it will go right. Libra, you don't have to struggle. Things are in the right place and you're fine as you are. But there are a couple of places which it would be useful for you to go to, if only for a few minutes. By making a brief appearance, you're showing that you're serious. And in this light, there are many places and many people who will give you a warm welcome. Scorpio, on the surface, it feels that there's not much you can do. You don't have the power or the authority. Events unfold and your input doesn't matter. However, at an unconscious and emotional level, your finger is on the pulse and your inner desires can make things happen and not happen in an almost supernatural way. Sagittarius, as your birthday season unfolds, you're increasingly getting into your stride and you're able to assert yourself to maximum effect, and you're helped by sextile aspects that the moon makes with the sun and Mars. The world is with you, and your friends and associates will carry you through to your next success. Capricorn, you're keen to be successful, and in terms of your career, your hidden strengths could be very useful. However, you have to think about the best way of making an impression. There's a danger that you do what is easiest rather than what is most appropriate, and this slight laziness on your part could blunt your impact. Aquarius, today you're forward-thinking and forward-looking, and you're thinking about how best to get ready for the next set of challenges. Your understanding of the world around you might be good, but it could be better, and you perhaps realize that there are things out there that you need to learn more about. Pisces, you don't stand out, and maybe that's a good thing. You can get on with your own business without being worried or disturbed. At the same time, your approach will be somewhat unusual and not what other people are expecting. And in terms of making material progress, this will give you a distinct advantage. So going through these 12 signs, this reminds me that I've actually forgotten quite an important aspect that's going on today. So one thing I have missed, so I'm just going back to today's astrology, and it's this thing. It's Mercury. There's Mercury at 6 Capricorn, and it's trine Jupiter. This is a very fortunate aspect. You know, Mercury is the communication planet. Jupiter is the planet of good luck. So now it's a great time to communicate. And remember, before I did the 12 sign the forecast of the 12 signs, I mentioned that Mercury was on the Venus-Mars midpoint. That does allow us to communicate in a very charismatic way. And with Mercury also making this trine aspect to Jupiter, if we've got something to say, today might be the time to say it. We can make people feel good about themselves as well. If there's a letter that you've been planning to write, or email, text message, or making a phone call, and you really want to make a good impression, and you want to make someone feel good about themselves and make them feel good about you, then now might be your chance to do it. Okay, sorry I missed that Mercury-Jupiter trine, but I think that's important, and I did need to go into a bit of detail about it. So now I'm going to look at the I Ching. As always, I ask the question, what is Thursday going to be like for people watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 11, which is peace. It's a very nice hexagram because everything is in the right place. You can see it's a very grounded hexagram. You've got the sort of heavy unbroken lines at the bottom, the broken lines at the top, and you might have the symbolism that the good, the heavenly has come down to earth, and the the sort of not so good, I won't say not so good, but us humans have got a sort of a taste of heaven. So everything is complementing each other, and so the day starts off, I think, pretty well. Everything's in harmony, and that kind of fits with the fact that we've got Moon in Libra. Moon in the middle of Libra. Moon is sextile the Sun, so the Moon, the Sun, and the Moon, two most important planets. I know they're not really planets, but astrologers call them planets. The Sun and the Moon are in sextile aspect. So yeah, everything is in harmony. Masculine, feminine are in order. Masculine is the Sun, feminine is the Moon. They're in a fortunate, they're in a favourable aspect. So with this hexagram, we may feel that just everything's fine. Things are working well. If we want to get things done, we can get it done, and we're not going to get too much resistance from other people. So perhaps we can just relax, or maybe not. There is a moving line here, and the third line moves. Now, in the I Ching, the third line is often unfortunate. And what the third line reminds us is that it reminds us that nothing lasts forever. So when we enjoy the peace and contentment and everything flowing today, we must remind ourselves that in the end, things are going to perhaps disintegrate. Not necessarily in a way that's going to be bad for us. We may be able to get around it, but everything's in a cycle. When there are times of peace, is obviously going to be followed by times of war, times of happiness followed by sadness, whatever. So this is a way of things. It's the natural cycle. So we must be aware of it. We don't have to get upset about it. We just need to be properly prepared and just take a sort of a more sort of spiritual view of the thing, and perhaps be a little stoical about it. And because this third line moves, because we've got a broken line here, it moves to a second hexagram, and it moves to hexagram 19. Greg Winkup calls this leadership. The Wilhelm translation calls it approach. It's certainly about other people. There is an opportunity here for us to adopt a position of leadership, to be able to organize our world. And this may be about confronting the fact that peace is starting to break down. There may be signs that the harmony is beginning to fray. And so this might be the time to adopt a position of leadership, to tell people what to do, but not in a massively authoritarian way. This particularly is the case in a working situation. Depends on where we are in the hierarchy. So, for example, if you are in a position where you are, say, I don't know, organizing people, but there's someone above you, you don't want to go too far because you might alienate yourself from the higher authority. So you've got to understand your position in the hierarchy, whatever kind of leadership you are displaying. Yeah, you can't take it too far unless you're the dictator and there's no one above you, but there's always someone above you. If you're a dictator, well, you've always got God to consider, haven't you? So you've got to accept the position of leadership and not take it too far. But you can organize your environment and you can take active measures to make sure that these disintegrating forces that are always there are kept at bay. Okay, so that's the I Ching. I think overall the I Ching is pretty good for today. We've got it sort of complements the fact that the moon and the sun are making this fortunate sextile aspect. So that looks like a good day overall, provided we're just on our guard. Now, as far as Pearl Harbor is concerned, I want to quickly look at the chart of Pearl Harbor because because it is Pearl Harbor Day. It is the day of infamy, as Roosevelt said. So Pearl Harbor, the Pearl Harbor attack. So this is the chart for the Pearl Harbor attack. I've taken December the 7th, 1941, so that was 82 years ago. And, one can look at this in several ways. This is the Japanese starting a war with America, with the United States. Was it a good time to start a war with the United States? Sure, they might have been successful in the first instance, though I believe that, was it 2 carriers or something were not in the port, and so the fact they weren't able to take out these carriers, was it 2 carriers? I don't know. I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff, but it could have been better. So would this have been a good time to start a war? Look at the moon. The moon is at 2 degrees Cancer. 28 degrees Cancer. So the moon is, and it's going to a sextile of Neptune. Okay, moon sextile Neptune for sinking a fleet is pretty good. Looking at it from a Japanese perspective. But the Neptune is a traditional planet. sorry, is not a traditional planet. It's a discovered planet. So the moon is void, of course. It's made its last aspect to a traditional planet. So the attack ultimately is going nowhere. Even though, yes, it's leading to a whole war. But for Japan and Japan's success, I mean, let's not forget that after Pearl Harbor, Japan did really well for 6 months, and that was it. After 6 months, Japan was in decline. Was that Battle of Midway or something? After that, it was just constant retreat after retreat after retreat until the whole thing finished at Hiroshima. So that's the first point. Neptune, a sea attack. Look at Neptune. Neptune is pretty much exactly square the ascendant. If you're into sort of whole sign houses, it really does have a sort of a 10th house feel to it. That Neptune, a strong 10th house feeling because it's on the 10th house cusp. In fact, if you were using an equal house system, it would be on the 10th house cusp. But yeah, so Neptune is prominent. It's the most elevated planet, square the ascendant. So that certainly makes sense. Another thing about it is we've got Sun-Jupiter opposition. So Sun-Jupiter opposition. Sun-Jupiter opposition is where the whole thing explodes. Remember, with a Sun-Jupiter opposition, a Sun-Jupiter opposition is the same thing as an Earth-Jupiter conjunction from a heliocentric perspective. Let me just show you let me just turn this into a heliocentric chart. That's Pearl Harbor from a heliocentric perspective. Not from the Earth's perspective, but from the Sun's perspective. So if we put the Sun at the center of our chart, and we look at where the planets are compared to the Sun, we can see that there's an Earth. That's the Earth, that little cross thing. There's no Sun in this chart. There's no Moon in this chart because the Sun and the Moon are in the Earth and the Moon are in the same place. So from the Sun's perspective, so if there's an Earth-Jupiter conjunction, and that's when it pops. Jupiter explodes things. Also, from a heliocentric perspective, you can see that there is an exact Mercury-Mars opposition there. So that's the heliocentric chart, and it gives us the same information. Well, certainly with the Earth-Jupiter, from the Earth-Jupiter perspective, we are reminded with Pearl Harbor that that's what was really happening from the Sun's perspective. Now, the reason Mercury can be so far away from the rest of the planets, you can never get that in a geocentric chart, because the Earth Mercury always hugs the Sun in a geocentric chart, but in a heliocentric chart, Mercury is moving around the Sun very fast, 88 degrees. 88. It takes 88 days for the Mercury, I think, to move around the Sun. So that's why you get Mercury in this rather strange position. And from a heliocentric perspective, Mercury is opposition Mars, this very violent message, and it's sort of applying to the opposition of Saturn. So I think the heliocentric chart gives us a slightly different view, on the matter. Okay, so let's go back to the normal chart. So yeah, I mean, I think that with the void moon, it wasn't a great time to do that attack, because ultimately the attack was going nowhere. When you're dealing with this kind of thing, you also need to look at the outer planets, and this was a time of the Saturn-Uranus conjunction. This was what was going on at the beginning of the Second World War, particularly from America's perspective, and the Soviet Union and the United States obviously came into the war in 1941. And so these were the times in which the world was living. So the question is, how does the Pearl Harbor chart relate to the United States chart? So I put the American chart, the United States chart, July the 4th, we think 10 past 5 in the afternoon. I put that in the middle. So the question is, does the Pearl Harbor chart, does it confirm the ascendant in any way? So look at the Sun-Jupiter opposition. The Sun-Jupiter opposition is fairly close to the United States' ascendant. The ascendant for 10 past 5 in the afternoon is at 12:21 Sagittarius. So that is pretty close. It's not exact. But the question is, did it have to be exact? Well, a few days before, the Sun would have crossed the United States' ascendant. And so maybe it's exact enough. Then we've got a Sun-Mercury conjunction. So this Sun-Mercury conjunction at the time of Pearl Harbor, so you can see that Mercury was at 7 Sagittarius, Sun was at 15 Sagittarius, so that means that Mercury and Mars were about 8 degrees apart. That is pretty wide for a conjunction. So you might ask, what is the point in looking at a conjunction which is so wide? Well, let's consider what would be the midpoint of that conjunction. So if they're 8 degrees apart, so the midpoint would be about 11 or 12 Sagittarius. So the Sun-Mercury midpoint was right on the United States' ascendant. So I think overall, that lineup between Jupiter, Sun, and Mercury does suggest that the United States ascendant is pretty much where it is. Okay, it may not be at 12 degrees, but it seems to be certainly in the middle of Sagittarius. Also worth noting, Neptune at the time of Pearl Harbor attack was at 2942 Virgo. So in other words, it was actually quite close to the Aries point. So Neptune on the Aries point. Neptune is a planet of the sea. So that kind of fits with a mass sinking of a part of the American fleet. Also, Neptune is very close to the United States' midheaven. Not exactly there. Now, you could argue that, that might suggest that the signing of the Declaration of Independence maybe was a bit earlier. Maybe the midheaven is in end of Virgo rather than the beginning of Libra, because that would mean that Neptune would be exactly on the midheaven. But having Neptune close to the midheaven certainly fits the event. Another point to make is that you need to consider America's chart and its potential. So the United States has a Mars-Uranus conjunction on its descendant. Now, I've talked about this at some length. In America's case, I think that the Mars-Uranus conjunction is about attack. It can be about terrorism. It's in the 7th house. It's about projection. I think to a great extent the United States does project its fear of terrorism. It sees terrorism everywhere except in itself. We know that the United States is quite capable of terrorism. Look at the Nord Stream 2 pipeline supplying Germany with Russian gas, and the Americans blew it up. And so they're going on talking about the world. The world is the terrorists in the Middle East and so forth. But in fact, America has got a terrorist streak itself, which perhaps it needs to own. So that's that Mars-Uranus opposition. But that does suggest an attack coming from outside. And so having that Mars-Uranus opposition, having Jupiter pretty close to the Mars-Uranus midpoint. The Mars-Uranus midpoint is going to be about 36, about 15, about 15, about 15 Gemini, and so Jupiter's pretty close to the Mars-Uranus midpoint. The Sun's pretty close to the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So that Mars-Uranus midpoint was really activated by the Sun-Jupiter opposition, and of course that Mars-Uranus opposition is made especially strong by its proximity to the descendant. One other thing I want to look at in terms of Pearl Harbor is the prenatal lunation. So that would be the lunation. So there was a full moon on December the 3rd, 1941. And I think we need to look at that. And in astrology, when you're looking at whatever horoscope, astrology of people, events, whatever, always try to look at the prenatal lunation, whether it's a new moon or a full moon. And have a look. The prenatal lunation was at 11:19, 11:19 Gemini, playing 11:19 Sagittarius. So if we compare the two, inside is the United States chart with its ascendant supposedly at 12:21 Sagittarius, and we can see that this prenatal full moon on December the 3rd, 1941, which would have been 4 days before Pearl Harbor, was exactly on the United States' ascendant. So, okay, 1 degree off. So I just think that looking at this chart really does, looking at the United States chart, comparing it with Pearl Harbor, really does suggest that around 5:10 in the afternoon seems to work very well for the United States horoscope. Now, I think this is to an extent confirmed by the 9/11 chart. So this is the 9/11 chart. So in the middle, I've got the United States' chart. On the outside, I've got the chart for 9/11, when the planes went into the World Trade Center. And so there you can see that there was a Saturn, at the time of 9/11, there was a Saturn-Pluto opposition at 12, Pluto at 12 Sagittarius, Saturn at 14 Gemini. And again, this Saturn-Pluto opposition was right on the United States' ascendant. If we take 5:10 p.m. on July the 4th, 1776, is when the United States starts. So I do think that Saturn-Pluto at the time of 9/11 really does seem to confirm the ascendant. Finally, I want to look at the future. I want to look at a date. Yeah, I want to look at the date in the future. This is a new moon on June the 22nd, 2028. So this doesn't actually happen for another 5 years. And what I find interesting about this new moon, I mean, it's not the fact that it's a new moon. I'm not so interested in a new moon. I'm more interested in Mars and Uranus. You can see at this time there is a conjunction between Mercury, Mars, and Uranus in June 2028. Now, that may hit America in a big way. So let me just compare that with United States' chart. So So remember, this is the future, 4 years in the future. You can see that there's a Uranus return. Uranus is kind of returning to where it was at Pearl Harbor. And Mars is conjunct Uranus. And remember, the United States has a wide Mars-Uranus conjunction. So this Mars-Uranus conjunction in June 2028 does hit America's descendant. So at this time, the United States has to be really, really careful, because I think there's a high chance of some kind of attack, whether it's a terrorist attack or an attack by an enemy nation, in about 4 years' time, summer of 2028. So that is a date for your diary. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. I think we have, I think that we have pretty good evidence here astrologically that that the United States' birth time of 7:10 p.m. is fairly close to the real thing, and it does tie in with Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you found that interesting, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.